Tiberius Caesar, one of the most pivotal and important rulers in Roman history, and by extension, one of the most significant in Western history as a whole. Tiberius rose to absolute power at a crossroads in history. Augustus, the founder of the Roman Empire, and Tiberius's adopted father, had just died after 58 years in public life, during which time he evolved from a teenager fighting to survive to a young man contesting with more powerful and experienced rivals. He shared power with allies, and finally, after defeating everyone else in his path, assumed sole and absolute power over the Roman world. The death of Augustus created a danger, not just to his successor, but to the very survival of the empire, a danger that only the most skilled of politicians and cunning of men could hope to overcome. By all appearances, Tiberius was not the right man for this task, and yet he can be credited with saving Rome. Here's why. On the Ides of March, 44 BC, Julius Caesar was assassinated on the floor of the Roman Senate. The shock this caused to the people of Rome cannot be overstated. When Caesar's will was read, his nephew Octavian, who later assumed the name Augustus, was adopted and made Caesar's heir. This caused civil war to ensue, with the 18-year-old Octavian first hunting down Caesar's assassins, and then, one by one, overcoming his own rivals to power. Tiberius's mother, Livia, was married to the senator Tiberius Claudius Nero. Livia bore him Tiberius in 42 BC and was pregnant with another son, Drusus the Elder, in 38 BC when she divorced her husband to marry Octavian. In 32 BC, Tiberius's biological father died, and though just a boy, Tiberius delivered the eulogy at the funeral. Octavian defeated Antony and Cleopatra in 31 BC at the Battle of Actium and became sole ruler of the Roman world. He was awarded a triumph to celebrate, and young Tiberius was given a prominent role by being allowed to ride in the triumphal chariot with his adoptive father, who at this time changed his name to Augustus. By the age of 17, Tiberius was deemed old enough to enter politics and was given the position of quaestor. Augustus also waived the age requirement and allowed Tiberius to stand for election as consul, one of the highest offices in Rome. In 20 BC, Tiberius was sent to the east in his first military campaign, where he succeeded in regaining by negotiation standards that had been lost in battle a generation earlier, thus proving his ability as a diplomat. That is why, at about this time, Tiberius was allowed to marry Vipsania, the daughter of Augustus's most trusted general Marcus Agrippa. By all accounts, this marriage was a happy one, and produced a child, Drusus, who was born in 14 BC. After Agrippa died in 12 BC, Tiberius was ordered to divorce his beloved wife and marry Augustus's daughter Julia. In this era, marriages were used as political matches and were not entered into for emotional reasons, but Tiberius was said to be deeply distressed by this move, as he loved Vipsania and despised Julia, whose frequent affairs were common knowledge to everyone but her father Augustus. On one occasion, long after the divorce, Tiberius caught sight of Vipsania in public, and according to the imperial biographer Suetonius, looked upon her with a sad and tearful gaze. After this incident, it was ensured that the two never crossed paths again. Perhaps this is why Tiberius was sent to the Danube region to put down troublesome barbarian tribes, and then to the Rhine region, which was the frontier between Rome and Germania. These campaigns were a great success, and in 7 BC, Tiberius was elected consul for the second time. Oddly, in spite of his success in both war and politics, Tiberius was not a happy man, and in 6 BC he announced that he was retiring from public life and moving to the island of Rhodes. But after Tiberius announced his self-imposed exile, his relationship with Augustus seems to have become somewhat strained. Augustus felt that he needed Tiberius's service, and Tiberius apparently held a grudge against Augustus for his forced divorce. During this period, Julia engaged in several very prominent and very public affairs. When Augustus discovered this, he banished some of her lovers and had others executed, Julia herself was exiled to a small island and forbidden any luxury by her father, who also declared her and Tiberius to be divorced, which no doubt was welcome news to Tiberius. Augustus and his wife Livia did not have any children of their own, and Augustus's health was always somewhat frail. The question of who would succeed him seems never to have been far from his mind. His first heir was Marcus Agrippa, but as mentioned, Agrippa died in 12 BC. Augustus had 2 grandsons through his daughter Julia, Gaius and Lucius Caesar, who were named joint heirs after the death of Agrippa and retirement of Tiberius. However, Augustus's plans unraveled as Lucius died in AD 2, and then in AD 4, Gaius died while on campaign in Armenia. With no other options, Augustus ordered Tiberius back to Rome, where Augustus formally named him sole heir to the whole of the Roman Empire. Then in AD 9, 3 Roman legions commanded by the general Varus were destroyed in an ambush. Almost all of the troops in these legions were killed, and the Roman standards were taken by the barbarians, bringing shame on the Romans and causing Augustus considerable personal grief. When Augustus died in AD 14, he had reigned longer than any Roman emperor would after him, and power passed peacefully to Tiberius. On September 17th of that year, the Senate voted to pass all of Augustus's powers to Tiberius. In a probably insincere show of humility, Tiberius refused to accept these powers. But rather than make him appear a humble public servant, his refusal threw the succession into confusion, angering some senators and dismaying others. One senator reportedly yelled out, "Let him take power or go home." Tiberius relented and accepted the powers and titles that the Senate awarded him. In addition, he accepted his nephew Germanicus Caesar as his heir. During the reign of Augustus, the Roman coinage became standardized in both material and form. Tiberius was not the type of man to innovate unless necessity compelled him to do so. Therefore, the changes he did make were modest in nature. Gold and silver was used primarily to promote the imperial family, while the bronze coinage served as a means of disseminating imperial propaganda. The largest denomination used in the empire was the gold arius, a coin worth 25 denarii, or about a month's wage for a common laborer. It is unlikely that most common people ever saw a gold arius. This was a coin of the upper class. The largest issue of gold during Tiberius's reign is represented by this arius, which shows a bust of the emperor on the obverse and a seated figure believed to be the emperor's mother Livia on the reverse. They were minted throughout most of the reign, from AD 16 to 37. While all Roman gold is scarce and highly desired by collectors, this type is among the most commonly seen of Roman gold coins. The overall mintage must have been several million, though most have not survived into modern times. Before his death, Augustus had promised the legions on the German frontier a bonus. When Tiberius failed to pay this bonus, the legions rebelled. When order could not be restored, Tiberius sent his son Drusus, along with Germanicus, to quell the revolt. Germanicus was always popular with the army, and not only regained control, but led the troops on an expedition in which they were able to plunder treasure from the German tribes, which Germanicus told them counted as their promised bonus. Also during this expedition, Germanicus recaptured the standards lost by Varus in AD 9, and regained the land lost after his defeat. All of this success made Germanicus more popular in Rome than Tiberius felt comfortable with. Because of this jealousy, he sent Germanicus to Antioch, Syria, to govern the eastern section of the empire. But a little over 12 months in that position, Germanicus died suddenly in AD 19. It was widely suspected that Tiberius had ordered the prefect of Syria, Piso, to poison him, and suspicion only grew when Piso killed himself soon after the accusations became widespread. Because of this suspicion, his popularity reached all-time lows, and Tiberius began to withdraw from public life once again. He shared more and more power with his son Drusus, who appears to have been his intended successor. Tiberius also advanced the career of a trusted guard of the imperial family named Sejanus, who was given the rank of Praetorian Prefect in AD 15. This position placed him in charge of the defenses of the city of Rome and made him head of the imperial bodyguard. It also placed nearly 10,000 soldiers under his direct command. His power was second only to that of Tiberius himself. Tiberius admitted as much by calling Sejanus his partner in labor. Tiberius seems to have had a naturally introverted personality and to have coped by withdrawing from difficult or unpleasant situations rather than confronting them. Sejanus's rule of Rome and administration of the empire allowed Tiberius to withdraw more and more from public life. His son Drusus died suddenly in AD 23 under suspicious circumstances. It is believed that Drusus's wife Livilla was having an affair with Sejanus, who induced her to poison him. Tiberius was greatly affected by the death of his son, but did not suspect Sejanus. At this time, he seems to have fallen into another period of deep melancholy. As in other periods of anxiety in his life, Tiberius chose to withdraw. In AD 26, Tiberius permanently moved to the island resort of Capri, located off the coast near Naples. Capri was the location of an imperial villa that had originally been used by Augustus. It remains a popular tourist destination even in modern times. With Tiberius away, Sejanus wielded tremendous power in Rome and exercised tight control over what information traveled between Rome and Capri, ensuring that the emperor only learned what Sejanus wanted him to know. Sejanus seems to have overstepped his position at this point. He asked for permission to marry Drusus's widow Livilla. This marriage would have put Sejanus in a position to succeed Tiberius, but Tiberius refused his request. This may be why Sejanus formed a conspiracy to overthrow Tiberius and become emperor himself. He was joined in this conspiracy by Drusus's widow Livilla and others close to the imperial family. Someone, it is unknown who, alerted Tiberius to the danger that he faced. In October of AD 31, a letter arrived at Rome from Tiberius. The letter ordered Sejanus to appear before the Senate on the 18th of that month to be awarded additional powers. When the morning arrived, a haughty Sejanus arrived at the Senate. There, another letter from Tiberius was read that condemned Sejanus as a traitor. Sejanus was executed by strangulation that same evening. Other members of the conspiracy, including Livilla, committed suicide to avoid execution. During the reign of Tiberius, Jesus Christ began his ministry. The lives of Jesus and Tiberius overlapped each other. The lessons of Jesus occasionally used Tiberius and his policies as points of illustration in his teachings and parables. The two men were not contemporaries. Tiberius was born in the city of Rome in 42 BC and would have been around 36 years old when Jesus was born in the tiny village of Bethlehem in the Roman province of Judea. 3 of the Gospels record an event where Jesus was asked if it was morally lawful to pay taxes to the Romans. Jesus instructed those around him to bring him a denarius and asked whose image appeared on it. They told him it was Caesar's image. Jesus replied, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." The denarius in question would have been a denarius of Tiberius Caesar, like this one. As with the gold Arius shown earlier, it bears the obverse image of Tiberius and shows what is thought to be his mother on the reverse. These coins are commonly called tribute pennies because in the Old King James translation of the Bible, the word denarius was rendered as the more familiar penny. Because he was isolated and unaccountable on Capri, Tiberius sank into cruelty and depravity. He amassed a collection of written works, paintings, and sculptures that were mostly obscene in nature. The Roman historian Suetonius records that Tiberius was once offered the choice of a large and valuable estate or an obscene painting. The emperor is said to have chosen the latter. The slightest offense to the emperor, real or imagined, could lead to death. Tiberius would often order people who displeased him to be thrown off a cliff on the island. Sometimes he had their legs broken, or had them tortured for his amusement. His contemporaries have recorded that he engaged in other vices that cannot be mentioned on a polite YouTube channel like this one. Not surprisingly, after the Sejanus conspiracy, he seems to have sunk into despair and fear of additional plots against his life, a fate that seems to plague most tyrants. In spite of this, Tiberius managed the empire wisely, built up the treasury, and secured the frontiers. Had he not been an able and talented administrator, it's doubtful that the governmental system left behind by Augustus would have survived. Unfortunately, one area that Tiberius neglected was to name an able successor. The youngest son of Germanicus, named Caligula, was summoned to Capri by Tiberius in AD 31. It is unknown what horrors Caligula would have witnessed or even been subjected to in his 6 years on the island, but they may have been a contributing factor to his later mental instability. The bronze coinage of Tiberius is more diverse than the silver and gold. Because of its use among the common people, it often bears types that are designed to send a message about policy. For example, this bronze ass shows Livia on the reverse. It was minted early in the reign and may have been intended to show the continuity of the imperial dynasty. This bronze ass, minted in the city of Rome in AD 23, pictures Drusus, and is a clear signal that Tiberius intended for his son to succeed him as emperor. However, Drusus died just a few months after this coin was minted. By the end of his life, Tiberius was described as being pale, bald, unusually thin, and covered in sores. The latter, perhaps, a symptom of venereal disease. He probably also suffered from clinical depression, which might explain his wish to withdraw from public life time after time. On the 16th day of March, AD 37, Tiberius appeared to have stopped breathing. Some reports say that Caligula removed the signet ring that Tiberius wore and was being congratulated as the new emperor, when suddenly Tiberius stirred to life. According to these reports, those congratulating Caligula fled in fear, while Caligula himself suffocated the old man with a pillow. Other sources simply state that Tiberius died of old age. In any event, at the age of 77, Tiberius Caesar died and was succeeded by Caligula. After his death, Tiberius's body was cremated, and his ashes were interred in the mausoleum of Augustus. The Senate declined to award him divine honors as it had for Augustus, and Caligula voided his will because he objected to some of the terms spelled out in it. In the end, Tiberius left behind a mixed legacy as a troubled and depressed old man who took part in every form of perversion imaginable, but who governed well and preserved an empire that would last 5 more centuries. He loved his first wife and his son, yet he cared for almost no one else. He was cold and uncaring towards his mother, even failing to attend her funeral. Tiberius may have been a terrible human being, but his reign was an incubator for Christianity, a life preserver for the orderly transfer of power, and a safeguard for the foundations of Western civilization. While he died unloved, unappreciated, and unmourned, perhaps he does deserve a measure of credit. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe. That way you'll be the first to know when new videos are published. Thank you for watching.